All right, welcome everybody. Thank you so much for joining. Today's program is part of the Presidential Primary Sources Project, and our program today is The Art of Being Lincoln, and it's being presented to us by the Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historical Park and the Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial. The Presidential Primary Sources Project is a collaboration between Internet2, the National Archives, and the National Park Service. It's a free series we put on every year from January through April. This is just a quick reminder that by participating today, you are agreeing to be recorded and archived. We do keep recordings of all of our programs on our YouTube channel so the teachers and students can access them later. All right, we absolutely want you to participate today. If you haven't already, go ahead and find your chat. It looks kind of like a caption bubble. That'll be an easy way for you to participate today. You're also welcome to join us on video. If you'd like to do that, go ahead and leave a message for me in the chat and I'll work on promoting you. Just be really respectful of our interactive tools. We want to make sure any questions we're asking, any comments we're making, that they're directly related to what our speakers are talking about today. All right, I just want to take a minute to thank you one more time. This is our website if you're looking to get more information about our upcoming programs, which are every Tuesday and Thursday through April, or if you're looking to find our recordings, you can find those there. With that, I'm going to go ahead and stop sharing and hand it over to our presenters.
Hello, and thank you all for joining us today. I am Ranger Paula, and with me is Ranger Aaron, and we work at Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial. We will be sharing with you, along with Rangers Lauren and Noel from Abraham Lincoln Birthplace, and we're going to be sharing you the art of being Lincoln. So several artists have created beautiful sculptures and paintings that can be seen in our parks. And we will be taking a closer look at some of this artwork and talk about that process of creating them. And also talk about why they were created and the stories that they tell. The artwork that are in these parks help to memorialize our 16th president, Abraham Lincoln, and his boyhood, youth, and then later throughout his life. And so Aaron's going to start bringing up our PowerPoint presentation so that you can see our pictures that we have for you here today. We are in the Memorial Visitor Center in our display of our cabin. And at Lincoln Boyhood, there's several, as I said, paintings and artwork throughout this visitor center. And we're going to focus today, though, on a very special part of our building, and that is the outside. We have some beautiful sculptured panels on the outside of the building that was created by an artist from Indiana, which was a kind of an important thing at that time. And he did 5 panels out of Indiana limestone to show these different phases in Abraham Lincoln's life. And so these five panels have titles to them. First one is Indiana, then Kentucky, Illinois, Washington, and then our center panel is Now He Belongs to the Ages. So Aaron's going to tell us more about these panels.
When you come to visit Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial, the first thing you'll probably notice about our Memorial Center is this gorgeous artwork that we have outside the building. They were created by a sculptor named E.H. Daniels. Here he is here. A sculpture is where you carve things out of stone. And like Ranger Paula said, this is the Indiana limestone that he used on the outside of the building. The whole point of the sculptured panels was to tell Abraham Lincoln's story. So it's kind of a timeline. It starts when Abraham Lincoln was born in 1809, and it goes all the way through until his death in 1865. So E.H. Daniels started work. He was working with a group of people or a committee to decide what they wanted to display in these panels and what people, what items they wanted to use and what kind of story they wanted to tell about Abraham Lincoln growing up here in Southern Indiana. Here you see a charcoal painting. They started out with a more simple approach to the artwork, right? So you can more easily draw and make changes on a drawing than you can once you sculpt into the rock. So started out with drawings, and these drawings were approved by his committee for the people and the things that they wanted to demonstrate. So this is the drawing of the Kentucky panel showing Abraham Lincoln. But I have a question for you guys. Which one of these figures do you think is Abraham Lincoln? You can write your response in the chat, please, and then they're going to help me see the chat. Write your response in the chat. Which one of these figures is Abraham Lincoln?
Kennedy said, the young man in the middle.
Yes, Abraham Lincoln is the little boy in this panel. How did you guys know that? What made you guess the young boy in this panel? Did you use context clues? How did you know that?
Kennedy said, it looks like him.
Okay. All right. Yeah, maybe it looks like him. When you look at our panels, sometimes people get the answer incorrect. They think it's a guy in a hat because we're used to seeing Abraham Lincoln in a hat. But we know he was born in Kentucky in 1809, and he moved away from Kentucky in 1816 when he was only 7. So we know he has to be the young boy in this sculpture because he was so young when he moved away from Kentucky. Okay, Ranger Paula is going to move. We're going to go from the charcoal drawing. Here you see the outside of the building again, and this arrow is showing you where on the building is the Kentucky panel. It looks a bit different than the drawing you can see here. And you might see why people think it's the man sitting down with the hat on his head. That is Abraham Lincoln. People choose him all the time when I ask the question, which one is Abraham Lincoln? But it's just because he's wearing a hat, right? The young boy is there. He's got a walking stick in his hands. I told you before that these are people and things that were important to Abraham Lincoln. Who do you think the woman is that's standing behind Abraham?
His mom.
That is his mom. That's Nancy Hanks Lincoln. And she's standing behind him. And she's also holding a book. Why might she be holding a book in the sculptured panel? What do we know about Abraham Lincoln that might give us a clue about why Nancy is holding a book?
Because she's a teacher, she taught him to read.
Very good. She did teach him to read. Yeah. He also went to school. She definitely encouraged his reading. Nancy actually didn't read, so she did encourage him, and she did tell stories at night as they sat by the fire. So she did encourage his love of reading for sure. Very good. So who's the girl behind Nancy, do you think? She's standing at a butter churn. She's doing chores. Who might that be?
A helper, his sister.
That is his sister. Very good. That's his sister, and she's demonstrating a chore that would have been something that pioneer kids would have done. She's at the butter churn, where you take the cream from the top of the milk from after you milk the cow. You take the cream, put it in the butter churn, and you mix it up with that churn, and it becomes butter. Very good. So lots of pioneer kids didn't go to a lot of school. They had to stay home and help the family survive on the survive as pioneers. What do you notice about the background? Where are we in this panel? What's the setting?
It's home, the log cabin.
Yep, Abraham's home was a log cabin, and they would have built it themselves with hand-hewn logs. And then it's in a forested area, right? Look at the trees. So he lives in a log cabin in a forested area there in Kentucky. In 1816, the family moved to Indiana. So here's the Indiana panel, the charcoal drawing of the Indiana panel anyway. Which one is Abraham Lincoln?
The man in the middle.
Yeah, the guy standing right in the middle, he's got an axe. A lot of times when Abraham Lincoln is depicted in art, he has an axe. And that is because of all the stories that he told, that he wrote down about his childhood, about helping his dad cut down a lot of trees here. So they needed to cut down a lot of trees in the area. It was a very heavily forested space. Why did they cut down the trees? Why did they cut down so many trees?
Firewood.
Yes, they would build fires to stay warm and to cook their food. What else?
To build a home.
Yes, they used the wood as a resource to build their homes, to build furniture. What else? This is a harder one. They needed to clear some of the trees out to create space for their homestead. So they needed to clear some space so they could raise their livestock, grow their crops, have a space for their home. So they
Oh, I think we lost our presenters. Sorry, everybody. Hopefully they'll be back in a minute.
What do you notice?
Oh, we actually lost you for a minute.
Okay, we're back.
You're
So
back. I think you'll need to reshare your PowerPoint.
I'm so sorry. Tell me again.
I think you'll need to reshare your PowerPoint.
Okay, here we go. We're working on it right now. Let me share my screen. Okay, can you see our PowerPoint again?
Yes.
Wonderful. Okay, so here is the Indiana panel with the charcoal drawing right next to it. What do you guys notice about the sculptured panel compared to the drawing? Is it the exact same?
And he said there's no animals in it.
Mm-hmm. Yep. The animals are not in the actual sculptured panel. Why do you think the charcoal drawings might be so different?
Maybe because
Why
it's
are they different than the
easier
panel?
to draw than to sculpt.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a lot easier to draw, and you can put a lot more detail into your drawing than you can when you're actually carving the images in the stone, right? Very good. Okay, Indiana panel, what do you guys notice about the background here? Where are we again? What's the setting?
The cabin again.
Log cabin again in a
Uh,
forested area.
they said that they're working and
Yeah, they're working.
maybe
Very good.
at a farm.
Excellent. Okay, so Abraham Lincoln gets older. He's about 21 when the family decides that they are going to move to Illinois. So let's look at the Illinois panel. Here's the sculptured panel. I'm so sorry. Here's the charcoal drawing for the Illinois panel. Um, and here's the placement there to the right of our front doors. And it tells the story of Abraham Lincoln in Illinois. Here's the drawing compared to the sculptured panel. Quite different, right? Quite different. Which one is Abraham Lincoln in the panel?
Someone said the man in the hat.
Abraham is standing right in the center there, the tallest one. He's standing there shaking hands. He's shaking hands with his business partners, his friends. They're congratulating him because he was elected to the U.S. House of Representatives here. What do you notice about the background of this panel? What's the setting?
Kennedy said it looks like a city.
Why does it look like a city, Kennedy? What gave you that clue?
Buildings.
Yeah. The tall buildings give you a hint that we're in a city, right? So this is Springfield, Illinois, a much bigger area with more people living there with tall buildings created. So no longer that forested area where he grew up, right? So in 1860, Abraham Lincoln was elected to be president of the United States. And so he moves to Washington. So here is the charcoal drawing when he moved to Washington in 1861. This charcoal drawing, what is it depicting, you guys? What do you think is happening here? What's the story?
War. Another vote for war.
First of all, what gave you that idea? What about this image told you this was part of a war?
The soldiers in the background.
Yeah, you can see the soldiers and they've got their guns and they're marching in rows, right? So very good. What war is it? Do you know? What war is this depicting?
The Civil War.
The Civil War. And a civil war is a different kind of war, right? It's two sides of the same country fighting against each other. So these were two sides, the North and the South, fighting against each other. And Abraham Lincoln was the president during that time. Let's look at the sculpture panel is all the way to the right on our building. And we'll look at them side by side. Generally, the same idea, right? Generally the same idea where Abraham Lincoln is in the center and he's being advised by Ulysses S. Grant, general for the North there, and they're flanked by soldiers, right? You can still see the soldiers marching in the background. A little bit less detail. There's no horses or anything like that in the sculptured panel, but a pretty close match to the charcoal drawing. Very good. And this says 1861 to 1865. What happened to Abraham Lincoln in 1865?
He was shot. He was assassinated.
Yes, Abraham Lincoln was shot in Ford's Theater, and he died the next day in 1865. By that time, the North had won the Civil War. The South had surrendered, and then just a short time later, Abraham Lincoln was actually assassinated. He was shot in Ford's Theater. So here is that panel, and then the next panel. It's our last one. It's right in the center of our building. And this is depicting a time after Abraham Lincoln, after his death. So here is the charcoal drawing that we can compare to the panel. It's right in the center. As you walk into the building, you walk right past it. It's quite different. So let's think about this. Here is Abraham Lincoln. What is he wearing in this panel? Can you tell?
Someone wrote a cape.
Yeah, it's like a long cape, a shroud, a robe, that kind of thing. It's kind of giving us a vibe that he's already dead, right? And this is the only panel on the building where you can see Abraham Lincoln's entire face. All the others are a profile of Lincoln's face, but this one you see his full face, and he's surrounded by people on the left there. Those images represent groups of people that benefited from Abraham Lincoln's life. So the guy on the far left with the hammer raised, that's a laborer. He's representing groups that have done physical labor or physical work to build up our country. Kneeling down there is a mother with her child, representing the families here. And then the man in the back has a satchel over his shoulder. He's sowing seeds, representing farmers and agriculture. And finally, a man is knelt down. It's hard to see in this picture, but he has shackles around his wrists, and the shackles are broken. What do you guys think that that represents? What was the artist trying to tell us?
That the slaves were freed.
Yes, this depicts an enslaved person, right? And the broken shackles represents their freedom. So excellent work. Abraham Lincoln stands there in the center. On the right, it's Cleo is handing a tribute, a laurel right there, as a tribute to Abraham Lincoln. In the background, there is a small log cabin and the White House, representing Abraham Lincoln's life journey from log cabin to White House. So those sculpture panels tell a really nice story about Abraham Lincoln's life, a complete story that you can get just from looking at the artwork on the outside of the building. So we're going to stop sharing, and we're going to, yeah, there we go. Okay, so we're going to stop sharing, and we are going to have our counterparts at Lincoln Birthplace, Abraham Lincoln Birthplace, come up on screen.
Hello, everyone. If Therese, if you could go ahead and click share, like give us the screen share abilities so we can share our screen. Oh, apologies for that. You should be all set.
Thank you, ma'am. And we are unable to see you all right now. So if I can get a okay once you can see my screen and it's all pulled up.
Yep, it looks good.
Thank you. So I'm Ranger Noel.
Hi, and I'm Ranger Lauren.
And we are here at the Abraham Lincoln Birthplace National Historical Park, coming to you from Hodgenville, Kentucky. At the end of this visit, I want to go ahead and let our teachers know that we're going to have an activity at the end, which you will need paper and some sort of writing tool. So markers, crayons, coloring pencils, whatever your preference is. So if you want to go ahead and start to get those ready, we'll come back to that at the end.
First and foremost, this is a map of the United States, and where that little arrow is pointing is where we are located in central Kentucky. We are in Hodgenville, which is about an hour south of Louisville, Kentucky. And from Lincoln Boyhood, we're about a 2-hour drive. Imagine how far that would have been for Abraham Lincoln to travel whenever he was a kid.
You can get there in just like an afternoon today, but in their time, man, that would have been so far.
And this is a map of our park. This is just a small portion of our birthplace unit, one of the 2 units we have here. This is able to be viewed from our website and our brochures if you have one of those. So keep that in mind if you want to look at it again later. But we're going to be focusing on the memorial building, which you can kind of see written in red on the bottom left of that map. Here is just a small picture of what farms looked like back in the late 1800s, early 1900s. And it's very likely that the farm that the Lincolns had when they were here in Kentucky would have looked something similar to this. Looks very different than modern farming today. So keep that in mind. A lot has changed in these past few hundred years. But this picture was taken here on our property. And this picture here is a actual picture of the cabin that we have inside of our memorial building, which we'll be talking more about in a little bit. But as you can see, it is a fairly small one-room cabin with a chimney to the left, and there is a person standing in front of the door looking in. Imagine what they're thinking and what you think standing there to this day too. And here we have a picture of the Sinking Spring. The farm here at the Birthplace unit was once called the Sinking Spring Farm, named because the sinking spring was made from a sinkhole that collapsed and water is moving through, hence the spring name. Where we are has a lot of karst features, means that there's a lot of caves, and there is a cave that is under our property, and this water is always flowing. This would have been very close to the cabin that Abraham Lincoln was born in, and it was very easy for the family to get water for many, many different reasons that they might need, whether it be washing, cooking, cleaning, you name it. If they needed water, that's where they had to get it.
I can't imagine having to live somewhere where your water doesn't come through in pipes. It must have been so important to them to find somewhere to build their cabin close to the
Oh,
water.
most definitely. And here is a picture of the memorial building. That spring we just saw is off to the left. And in the general area of where that memorial building is where we believe the cabin once stood that Abraham Lincoln was born in. And inside that memorial building is that cabin. But there's a lot of symbolism that takes place from this memorial building itself. And Ranger Noel will be talking about that in just a few minutes.
Yeah, one of the things that I like to think about when thinking about how we use art to portray not only our own thoughts and emotions, but historical events and the memories of other people. One of my favorite pieces of art relating to Abraham Lincoln is actually the memorial building itself. I think when we think about art, we think of paintings and drawings or even sculptures, but very rarely do we think about entire buildings.
And buildings can be art.
Yeah. One of the neat things I think about this building is that it's truly a giant work of art. But when you visit the park, the first piece of art you see is not the memorial building, but something that you're going to see when you visit every single national park, and that's the arrowhead. The arrowhead itself, I like to think of as our own little Park Service piece of art that has features of this piece that help represent different things about the National Park Service. We have the shape of the arrowhead itself, that shape representing the people, all the people who lived here, who have lived here before, and all of the work that they did to create this place and all the history. So pretty neat. We have something to represent everyone.
Yeah, that human element.
Next, we have the mountain. When you go up to the top of the mountain, there are lots of scenic views. So this represents all the scenic views in national parks that you might see and all the beautiful things there are to look at. We have a tree as well, sequoia.
Specifically, that is a sequoia tree.
And that would represent all of the different plants you'd see in a national park. I want you to go ahead and comment in the chat some plants that you would think you would see when you're visiting a national park near you, wherever you may be living. And last on here, next to last, we have a bison representing all of the different animals you might see in a national park. So I want us to go ahead and throw in the chat too some animals you might see in a national park near where you live. And if I could get some help reading some of the animals and plants out of the chat.
Yeah, because where we are in Kentucky, we don't really see many of those.
No, see any bison, no. We do see deer and turkey, squirrels, lots of birds.
Yeah, but no bison. One time,
that there are trees and flowers. You might see a bear.
Yeah.
Ooh, yeah. Where are you from that you see bears?
Yeah.
That's not here.
Not in Kentucky. There's not very many bears, at least in this part of Kentucky. The last feature we have is a lake or a piece of water representing recreation and fun. I like to remember that because when you go out onto the water, you have lots of recreation, lots of fun. It's also representing the waterways and water inside the national parks.
And really, at our park here, we have all 5 of these elements that we are helping protect and preserve. And every national park you go to has them in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, you have the human element, the people, plants, animals, scenic views, and recreation.
Even if you're in the middle of the city,
you have all of those elements, absolutely.
Somehow.
But I want to get back to our piece of art that you can only find in this national park, the memorial building. Whenever you are in the memorial building, the first thing you'll do is you'll start to head up the stairs. Let's get a little closer in. The stairs are one of the first features of this piece of art that have a special meaning. The number of stairs for the memorial building directly correlates with the number of stairs that were, the number of years that were in Abraham Lincoln's life.
Which was 56, which is a lot of steps, but if you think about it in terms of somebody's life, it's really not that long.
One of the next features as you start to get a little bit closer to the memorial building will be the scrolling pattern you see around the entire border of the memorial building. And there's a little red arrow pointing to it on the screen, and it can be kind of hard to see. So up in the corner, I've put another example of what people would call a Greek key, which is used in many, many architecture styles and buildings, even in the modern day. And it would be used to represent eternal flow or unity. I suspect that when they were building this building, one of the reasons they picked it was that it does often to people represent unity, which could have represented the unity Abraham Lincoln brought to this country.
And kind of with that, the materials themselves for the memorial building came from both the North and the South to try and connect to that unification idea as well.
One of the next features you'll see just as you enter the memorial building is actually up on the ceiling. And that's the rosettes all around the ceiling. 16 of them, right, Ranger Lauren?
That's right.
Representing that he was the 16th president. But the rosettes themselves are an acanthus flower. And an acanthus flower traditionally would represent a long life, enduring life, or even immortality. And I suspect maybe one of the reasons they picked it is because that was the purpose of this building. They wanted to memorialize the idea of Lincoln and make sure that his idea and the ideas he represented to many people could have an enduring life and live on past his physical life here.
Last but not least, we have the cabin itself.
That's my favorite symbolic feature.
There's many different elements that you could actually take being a symbol with the cabin. Some folks like to think that it's the starting from this small one room to going to the White House and the growth of Abraham Lincoln, but there are many others as well. What are some things that you think?
Yeah, this is one of my favorite symbolic features because there really is no right or wrong answer on what this symbolizes to someone. To me, I think it represents the idea of an American dream that you can, with hard work, create a new life for yourself and a life that you really want to see. But I've heard other people say great things like it represents freedom or it represents their family. When we get some answers in the chat, you want to chime in with some of those?
Sure.
What would this cabin represent to you?
Kennedy Elementary said starting from small beginnings. Autumn and Veronica said it represents home.
Yeah, those are all right answers. And I think that every answer is right answer when it comes to what this cabin means to someone, which I think is a really good way to start to think about how even when the artist has a specific meaning in mind, when they create a piece of art, when people view that art, it can take on a new meaning. So I want you to think about all these symbols you saw today and anything you think of that might symbolize you. What would you use to represent yourself? Ranger Lauren, do you have a symbol in mind you'd use to represent yourself?
Well, there's lots of different symbols that have different meanings, but I'm thinking off the top of my head, probably a smiley face because I have a really happy personality, and that's just a really easy symbol.
I think that would represent you really well. Maybe a green smiley face, since green's one of your favorite colors.
And greens kind of means like that kind of a calmer, like more natural kind of thing. Because colors have meanings too.
I think maybe I'd pick a plant to represent myself. Because I really like to garden and I like to go out in nature and hike and look at the plants. So maybe some type of plant.
We do have a quick question. Is the cabin the actual one that Lincoln was born in, or is it just representative of that time?
So that's a great question. While the cabin is a historic cabin, it is very old. It doesn't quite old enough for Abraham Lincoln to have lived in it. So while it's not the exact cabin he would have lived in, to many people, it is representative of the cabin he would have lived in. So it is truly a symbol. Yeah. So no, it is not the cabin that he would have lived in.
It was thought to be for a number of years, but found out later that that is not the case.
It's not quite old enough, but it is still pretty neat to imagine him living in a cabin similar to that one. That was a great question. So it's time to start our activity. So get your paper and colored pencils or crayons or whatever you'd like to choose ready. And we're going to create a piece of art we would use to represent ourselves. So I want you to design your very own piece of art. You could draw just a painting, a drawing. You could design a sculpture or even your own building that you would use to represent yourself. So I'm going to stop sharing my screen here as we work on this. But I wanted to pass it back to Lincoln Boyhood National Memorial and ask you all, what would you use to symbolize yourself and represent you all?
Well, it's a hard question because there's a lot of different things about me, but maybe I would pick something about traveling. So maybe like a little paper airplane and traveling, maybe having my little luggage, maybe some little origami type of things rather than just drawing. I'm not a good drawer in any way. So I choose my art and other ways. So maybe some origami, but to demonstrate my love of traveling.
Very cool. Very cool. Are you a good artist, Lauren? Are you good at drawing?
Nope.
No?
I am not a good drawer.
I'm pretty good at coloring. I'm like an expert color.
I have high ambitions, but not the best skill.
Oh, we have someone say that we use a star to represent themselves.
Ooh, and I saw a polar bear too. And yes, Abraham Lincoln did have children. He had 4, all boys, but only one survived into adulthood.
For our Facebook viewers, someone in the chat asked, did Lincoln have children? If anyone else has any questions that they want to ask, feel free to go ahead and throw those in the chat. And even if you don't have any questions, we want to hear what kind of art you're working on right now that you are going to create to represent yourself. We'd love to hear what you're working on.
Ooh, we have somebody doing a purple, blue, and green heart.
Those are really pretty cool colors. Some nice muted tones.
Another question was, who was his wife and how did he meet her? His wife was Mary Todd. She was actually here from Lexington. She was from Lexington, Kentucky, and they met at a party in Springfield, Illinois. They were introduced, I should say, at a party.
Hey, wasn't that the party where he said that he wanted to dance with her in the worst way? And then she later said, and he did?
What is your favorite thing about Lincoln? Just got asked in the chat. Ranger Aaron, do you want to take that one?
Sure. I think my favorite thing about him was just his sheer determination. Like I said, he didn't have that many opportunities to really go to formalized schooling. But he became a lawyer. He became a member of the U.S. House of Representatives and then the President of the United States. So he worked really hard and he was very curious and wanted to know a lot and learn and read. And I think that's probably my favorite thing about him.
Yes, I did used to work at Sagamore Hill at National Historic Site.
Someone in the chat said, did Ranger Lauren used to work at Sagamore Hill?
Yes, I did.
Is she looking kind of familiar to you, maybe?
I worked there a number of years ago.
You could have just said it was your twin or something. You know, there's 2 of you. That'd be kind of fun.
Oh, I got more hearts people doing for their pictures. I love it. All these different colors.
All right. Well, while we wait for a few more questions, I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for attending. We really appreciate your participation and just really thank our presenters as well. We so appreciate your time and you sharing all this great knowledge with us.
Thanks so much for having us. We were happy to be here.
Thank you for having us. This was so much fun today.
Absolutely.